Old money spends less on cars as a percentage of their net worth than any social class. This is an obvious point given that old money can have tens of millions of dollars in the bank and have a car worth $10,000 in the driveway. More importantly, old money also thinks less about cars than any other social class. Cars are required to function, providing safe, reliable transportation for family. They are not acquired to impress others, attract attention, or compensate for deficiencies in character or physique. Hello ladies, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Nicole and I've been on a little bit of a level up journey, and with that I've learned that there's things that you can level up that doesn't necessarily include money, and then there's things that you can level up with that will include money, and there's things that you can level up with while spending less. And that's where I have been enjoying sharing all of the things that I've learned with you while reading this old money book, How to Live Better While Spending Less: The Secrets of America's Upper Class. I've been sharing a lot of YouTube shorts and reels and TikToks about old money and the nouveau riche. And if you look at the old money societies back in the day, think New York, think England, the British aristocracy. Basically, what was happening was there were people that moved over to America and then they were gaining wealth. And these were the new money families. And the old money families, people that maybe came from aristocracy, came from royalty, they had money and they weren't allowing these new money people, nouveau riche means new money, they weren't allowing these new people into their circle, which is kind of petty when you think about it. But at the same time, there were certain attributes and certain characteristics of these new money people that were just a little bit uncouth. And it's so interesting because if you saw the video where I was talking about some of the habits of old money people is they read, and how if we read, we can look at humanity and history and we can see what happened in the past and also then predict what is going to happen in the future. If you saw that video, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, I'll link it right here for you. But I bring that up because some of the reasons of why the old money circles were being so petty and not letting the new money people into their society was the way that the new money people were acting was just uncouth, and it was flashy and it was overstated, and it was like trying to get people's attention. And when you come from old money, you don't necessarily feel like you have anything to prove. And so because it was like a try-hard, it was the ultimate try-hard situation. And then the more that the old money didn't accept the new money into these societies was the more try-hard and the more petty that the new money became. They also got a little bit crafty and they started marrying their children. The new money people started marrying their children into old British and European aristocracy families. So with that, then the old money had to start accepting these families because they started mingling with the old money families. Because basically what was happening was in Europe, in the UK, the old money families, the royal families, the aristocrat families, they didn't have money. And so the new money families that were in America, they had money, and then it was almost like they would save these old European and British families from losing everything because they were able to invest their money over here. If what I just said was confusing, the best example that you can see of this in like modern time right now is there's a show called The Gilded Age, and two, if you've watched any of Downton Abbey, I believe her name is Cora, that's the mom. That is her place in that family. She saved that family. And if you've seen the first few episodes of Downton Abbey, you'll hear Cora mention to her husband how they didn't like each other in the beginning because her character is based off of something called a dollar princess or a dollar bride. They were basically married into aristocratic family to give their money in trade for a title. And that was just the way it was back then. And it's so interesting because it's kind of a hypergamy situation, except the women often had the money, or the women's families, but they still kind of ended up marrying up because they got a title. And often, I believe there was over 400 women that were dollar princesses, and over, I believe, 100 of them got the title. So meaning they married the firstborn son, and so these were the ladies and the duchesses and the viscounts, etc. And so they really were able to do their new money families some good by gaining these titles and gaining them essentially the acceptance into New York old money societies. I haven't even started on my notes yet. That was just me really geeking out on the way societies ran back then. So I've totally gone off on a tangent. This video is supposed to be about old money and cars, but I think that should give you a little bit of an insight into how this old money and new money situation came to be. And the reason why I brought all of that up is that if you look back to history, you can see that the new money families acted in an opulent, splashing out, lavish way. And we can see that new money does exactly this in 2022. You can see the people that have newly gained their wealth, they are the people with the sports cars, with the huge bouquets of a million roses. And this is quite a nouveau riche behavior. Now, I do think that maybe there's not as much snubbery going around between the old money circles and the new money these days, but what do I know? I'm not old money. But one of the things I've noticed, bringing it back to what we're talking about in today's video, is that old money, they definitely don't have the most lavish cars. And if they have a lavish car, that car is their car for like the next 10 to 20 years. But you'll notice that these cars are maintained regularly, they are kept clean. And one of the things I'm noticing even more nowadays is they're often fuel efficient. And that, again, this brings me back to why I'm kind of trying to distinguish between kind of new money and old money. We can look at like Range Rovers and Land Rovers, and see like the British royals using them. But equally, they have the money to like buy the hybrid version. Whereas I feel like certain brands have been built up to be like, ooh, look at me, I'm in my matching Range Rover. But it's such a symbol of flashing new money, especially if you are purchasing a vehicle like this that is like for the brand and not necessarily with the fuel economic aspect of it, if that makes sense. The next thing that you'll notice with old money is that their vehicles, they don't have any modifications to it. So there's no tinted windows, there's no, when it's like boosted up, like the higher suspension, there's no rims. They might have customized the inside to their suiting, but there's not going to be any flashy modifications made to it on the outside. You'll also notice that convertibles are like a non-existent, or like the flashy muscle car is non-existent when it comes to old money. The only time you may see that is that if it's a vintage car. And then equally, those cars appreciate in value. So you can kind of see the business aspect and the business mindset that went into that. You'll also notice that old money will rarely have a monthly payment on a car, even though cars depreciate from the minute that you drive it off the lot. It seems ludicrous to old money mentality to be paying a low monthly payment, but then more over time. For what? Especially when a new car off the lot is more than most people's yearly wage. The next thing that is quite ludicrous to old money is paying cash for a new car that is super expensive. It, again, doesn't make sense to completely deplete your savings unless you're super rich. It doesn't make sense to completely deplete your savings for a new car that's going to depreciate in value the minute that you drive it off the lot. I think with inflation and just, it's become the norm that people will splash out in these areas for cars and also keeping up with the Joneses, when really it's quite ludicrous to think that people are spending all of this money on a vehicle. For those just starting out or starting over, 10% is a more reasonable figure. This means that someone making $50,000 per year would be driving a $5,000 car. The car is probably used from one owner who kept books and records of all maintenance and has never been involved in a car accident or natural disaster, things like a flood. The car is fuel efficient and inexpensive to maintain. The interior is in good condition and the exterior has no damage and few dents. If the previous owner is an old money type of person, all the better. The car has probably been in the garage and hasn't been driven into the ground. So I do have a really quick story for you before I wrap up this video, and it's A girlfriend of mine, we met up with her for dinner, and I feel like this is one of the exceptions to what this book is saying, but she just bought a Mercedes or maybe a BMW, I can't remember. And because of all the shortages, because of the pandemic, because of everything that's been going on in the world, there are not very many cars and luxury cars in the UK at the moment. And so she lucked out by getting this car. And when she drove it off the lot, she actually made money. And there are people hounding her to sell it. And if she sells it, she's gonna make a few grand. So she is contemplating selling it because it's a way that she's gonna make some more money, but then she'll be out of a car. But again, bringing it back to what I said in a previous video, old money people don't make rash decisions. So if she's in a position to go without a car for a period of time, why wouldn't you? You're able to make some money off of purchasing this car because of the demand. If you aren't very rich, the dumbest thing that you can do is go out and buy a new car. The car depreciates in value the moment you drive it off the lot. A used car does not. When you buy a new car, you are paying for the new car dealership overhead, which includes advertising, sales, commission, rent, and so on. When you buy a car used from an individual, not a used car dealership, you are more likely to pay for the value of the car and little else. Some may say you are simply buying someone else's trouble. Old money says, not if you do your homework. So very quickly, I'm going to tell you some of the tips that I've taken away from this portion of the book. Tip 1, old money tends to save 10% of their yearly salary, and that's what they'll put towards getting a car. Now, we have spoken about it in a previous video where old money is quite efficient and sustainable with their money. You'll find if people are insanely rich, they don't do this, but remember, just because someone's old money doesn't mean that they don't have a budget. Tip number 2, find a reliable mechanic. Honestly, reliable mechanics are worth their weight in gold. My uncle is a mechanic, and I haven't needed a mechanic since I've moved to England, but honestly, you won't regret finding a great mechanic. Ask your friends, ask online, and see who you're getting recommended, and then take stock of if some of those names are being repeated. Tip number 3, shop around for insurance. It fluctuates and you really can shop around and get a better deal. Tip number 4, service your vehicle regularly. It will save you in the long run, and that's one thing that I'm learning. Most of you that watch my channel are American. I'm Canadian, but I live in the UK. And here in the UK, they have something called a yearly MOT where you have to, in order to have your car on the road, you have to get it checked out and serviced. And I think it's such a great thing, even though it does cost money. And if they do find a fault, you have to get it repaired. But it makes sure that you do your due diligence and keep your car in tip-top shape and make it safe, keep it safe. And our last tip is tip number 5, keep it clean. I think we often see old money and we think, oh my gosh, they're lavish, they're opulent, but really they might invest in something that is of a higher quality and is of a higher value, but they keep this thing pristine, which then also adds to the image of it being of a higher value, even if it is an older model. So see if you can keep it clean. Anyway, my friend, that is it for this video. I hope you'll join me in one of the last videos in this series that is coming up, and it's all about old money and travel.